Aí, galera, nós estamos aqui para mais uma palestra no palco principal da Campus Party. Espero que vocês estejam curtindo o evento, espero que esteja tudo certo, né? A gente vai ter aqui agora a palestra de um ciborgue, tá certo? O primeiro ciborgue reconhecido por um governo no mundo. Então, se você quiser, aproveita o momento, vem aqui. Alguns avisos. A palestra vai ser em inglês e, portanto, se você precisar de tradução simultânea, você tem que buscar os radinhos da tradução simultânea aqui à esquerda do palco, tá certo? À minha direita e à esquerda do palco, você pode entrar na fila ali para pegar a tradução simultânea. Para o pessoal da imprensa, queria avisar que o Neil, após a palestra dele, vai estar disponível uma coletiva de imprensa aqui na sala do Campus Business. Portanto, se você for da imprensa e quiser participar, fazer perguntas para o Neil, por favor, aqui no Campus Business, logo após a palestra dele. Se tiver alguma dúvida, procurar o pessoal do Jeffrey Group, que é da assessoria de imprensa, aqui na sala de imprensa. Ok?
If you want, you can give an introduction in Portuguese, because then
yes, I'll do it in English.
And then I'll and whenever you.
Okay. All right. And you're, of course, you started first cyborg implementation, so you're okay. You can call it cyborg. Okay?
Yeah. I'll explain what I
explain what it is. Okay. All right.
Good.
New
Harbison.
Just trying to say it right way.
Yeah.
New Harbison.
Harbison. Yes, that's fine.
Nós só estamos dando um tempinho aqui, pessoal, pegar a tradução, tá certo? Mais um minutinho. Enquanto isso, eu vou apresentar um pouco. A gente está aqui com o Neil Harbison e ele é considerado, né, ele fundou a Associação de Ciborgues. Ele nasceu com uma doença rara, que ele vai explicar para vocês o que é, e por causa disso ele usa uma câmera, né, para auxiliar, para que ele possa ver o mundo de uma forma também que vai explicar especial, tá certo? E ele está aqui para falar um pouquinho, né, do que é ser, né, na verdade ele fundou uma organização que defende os direitos dos ciborgues, tá certo? Então, o que o Neil advoga é que os ciborgues deveriam ter, né, as pessoas têm direito a se tornar ciborgues, tá certo? É isso que ele vai explicar pra gente o que ele quer dizer com tudo isso, tá? Então, e aí? Quem aqui quer ser um ciborgue? Ok, algumas pessoas, tá certo? No final das palestras nós vamos ver de novo. I'm asking who wants to be a cyborg. So, not many people raise their hands.
Well, let's hope afterwards there's more hands up.
Ok, vamos ver se depois da palestra mais gente vai levantar a mão, tá certo? Então, só mais um minutinho. De novo, tradução simultânea. No final a gente vai fazer pergunta. Quem tiver pergunta em português, a gente vai traduzir para o inglês. Tá? Então, pessoal, sem mais delongas, tá certo? Com vocês, Neil.
Creo que eso es. I think I'll use this one. Well, maybe like this. I'll use it like this, maybe. Well, when I was a child and I went to school, I realized that the rest of the children in my class could identify colors easier than me. And I didn't know why. So we went to the doctor, and the doctor told me that I was colorblind. So then we understood that I had a problem with my eyes and that I couldn't.
You're saying that this was not very good for you to use this.
Yeah. Okay. So the doctor said I was colorblind. Then as time went by, I realized that there was another boy in the class that was colorblind, but I felt that I was confusing many, many more colors than him. So we went back to the doctor, and the doctor said that I was very, very, very colorblind. But this didn't convince us, and then we went to a specialist, and then the specialist said that I wasn't colorblind, but I was completely colorblind, which is called achromatopsia. So people with achromatopsia can only see in black and white. So when I was 11, I was told that I couldn't see color and that what I was seeing was actually shades of gray. So this was a bit of a shock, because up until then I thought that I was confusing colors, but from the age of 11 I knew that I couldn't see color. Then this created a special effect, like I kind of didn't like the fact that I couldn't see color, but mainly because, not because it was a personal problem, but because the rest of the world sees color. And this is what made me unhappy a bit. And even though I wanted to ignore color, I couldn't. So even if you don't see color, it's impossible to ignore that color exists, because you see it absolutely everywhere. For example, Greenpeace, Yellow Pages, Bluetooth, Yellow Submarine, Orange, the Red Cross, Blue Tack, Pink Panther. You find it absolutely everywhere. So you see it written down, so you can't ignore that it exists. It's even used a lot, even in surnames. I mean, Gordon Brown, his surname is a color. You can also find it in music groups, Pink Floyd. I mean, even though it's not important, you realize that pink is something that you cannot perceive, and this is constantly everywhere. Then there are other uses of color which there's no words. So, for example, when I go to a bathroom, I cannot tell which one's the hot water and which one's the cold water, because there's only color code. And there's many situations like this. For example, this is the metro in Sao Paulo. There's 4 different colors. It's mainly decided by colors. Sao Paulo is fine. It's not complicated, even in grayscale. But for example, if you go to Tokyo, you can really get confused. And this happens with all maps. You can differentiate a river from a normal motorway because you see it blue. I need to follow the line until I read that it's a river or it's a motorway or whatever it is. Now, there's also a lot of use of color in description. For example, if someone describes someone, they sometimes say, well, she's a girl with blonde hair, blue eyes, and she's dressed in pink. Now, for someone that doesn't see color, the only information I get is that the girl has hair, the girl has eyes, and that she's not naked. So it's a bit, there's not much information here. Another confusion is flags. For example, Italy, France, Italy, they share the same flag. Even Peru. So there's no real need for a European flag if you see in grayscale. You could all use this one because there's a lot of countries that use this common flag. Then I realized that it was impossible to ignore color. Even if you don't see color, you can't ignore color. So I decided to study visual art. And I felt a bit strange in class because I was the only one that could not see color. So I asked if I could use only black and white and gray at school. And I did the art course as normal, but in grayscale. But I felt a bit strange. I felt a bit like a priest. A priest, because I was working on something that I couldn't see and something that maybe doesn't exist. Because if you don't see color and if you don't perceive color, sometimes you doubt if it's all an hallucination from the humans and it's not actually existing. Then when I was studying color, I realized that through history, there's been a lot of relationships between color and sound. Newton, for example, he created one of the first color to sound scales. And then after him, there were many, many more. But this made me feel a bit more close to color because I was studying music. So I felt there was a relationship between something I knew and something I didn't perceive. But when I looked at this, I saw that there was no coincidence. Every person decided the relationship between color and sound very subjectively. So it was even more confusing because I didn't know which was right. Well, I finished the art school and then I went to Dartington College of Arts, and there I went to a conference about cybernetics. And on the 31st of October 2004, my life changed a bit because I realized that technology could be used to extend senses. And this was something that I had never realized, that we could use technology not as a tool, but as a way of extending senses. I say that because Adam, he talked to us about a jacket he built that had sensors in the back and that allowed him to perceive if there was someone behind. So this made me feel that the jacket was like having a third eye in the back. And I really liked this. So I went to talk to Adam and I said, listen, I can only see in black and white. Do you think we could create something so I can perceive color? And we started a project. We decided that the best way to perceive color would be through sound, because there's a strong relationship between color and sound. So we created the first iBorg. This is the first prototype of the iBorg that I'm wearing now, but in 2004 it looked like this. The project was a webcam connected to a computer, and the computer had a software that transformed the color in front of me into a note. So I was literally hearing the color in front of me, and at the start I didn't know what I was perceiving because I didn't know what color was what sound. So I was hearing notes, and then I learned that, for example, if I heard F, it meant that the color in front of me was red. And if I heard C sharp, it meant that the color was blue. And this was like a new world to me that opened a new way of perceiving that I thought I would never be able to do. So in March 2004, for the first time, I was able to perceive color, but through sound. So I started listening just first. It was these few notes, red, orange, yellow. And then I memorized the note for each color. And then I started getting used to it. And I found it very normal to hear F and know that the object was red, hear C, and then know that the object was blue. And I got really used to it, but I found that I needed to perceive more colors. So we extended the scale and extended the scale and extended the scale and extended the scale until we got to 360 notes for 360 different colors. So I was hearing different microtones, and I could tell which frequency color it was. Now I will play to you the 360 colors in the way I hear. This is what I hear when I look at grass, for example. Some people's eyes sound like this. Campus party sounds a bit like this. And now we're going back to red, and the circle ends all within 1 octave. Okay, so that's the 360 tones of color. But color is not just only tone. Color is tone, saturation, and light. And I can only perceive light. But now with this scale, I was able to perceive light and tone. But what was missing was saturation, which is if a color is very alive or if a color is dull. And because of this, we had to find a way to transform saturation into sound. And the most logical thing was to use volume levels. So Peter Keš from Slovenia introduced saturation levels to the iBorg with volume levels. So, for example, if I was having a very bright pink color, I would hear F, which would be red. I would see that it's light color, so I would know it's pink. And then if the volume was very loud, I would know it's a very vivid color. So I didn't stop using the iBorg. I thought I would use it just as a tool, but it became a new part of my body because I didn't stop using it. So I decided to use it 24 hours a day, and I never ever wanted to stop perceiving color. And this constant sound input into my head constantly created a new sense and a new feeling to me that I had never experienced. I felt that the software and my brain were starting to connect. I couldn't find the line between what was being told by the software and what was being told by my brain. And this happened weeks and weeks after I connected the iBorg. It happened especially after one day that I went to bed and I realized that I had dreamt in color. I realized that in my dreams, I was hearing different notes. I was hearing different colors. So from that moment, I realized and I understood what the word cyborg meant. It meant that the cybernetic device and my organism had united in such a way that I was already dreaming with electronic sounds that to me were colors. So it's very important to me this clear difference that I didn't felt that I was a cyborg when I started using the electronic eye. I started feeling that I was a cyborg when I wasn't able to differentiate the software from my brain. And this is something that's very, very intense, and it's very it changed the way you see everything, because suddenly to me everything sounds, because color is almost everywhere. Then in 2004, I had a little problem that I had to renew my British passport, and the government didn't allow me to renew my passport because I sent them a picture with the electronic eye. And apparently there's a law that says that it's not allowed to wear any electronic equipment on your passport photo. So I wrote to them and I explained to them that I felt that this wasn't an electronic equipment, that it had become a part of my body and an extension of my senses, and that I was using it 24 hours a day, and that it should be considered the official image on my passport. It took a long while until they responded, but in the end they replied and they said, we need a doctor certificate. So I had to go to my doctor and I had to explain to him what I felt and how this was changing my life. So he wrote a letter to the passport office, and my university as well. They wrote a letter to the passport office, and there was like a little campaign to defend the right to be a cyborg and to be officially, to have your own extension on the passport. And after some weeks, they finally accepted, and I was allowed to appear on my passport photo with the first cyborg. I should renew my photo because it's changed since then. So the first cyborg was like this. It had a camera, computer, headphones, but it kept evolving. The biggest problem of the first cyborg was that it was difficult to hear people because I was hearing color. And the second biggest problem was that I was carrying 5 kilos of computer in my back, so it was very heavy. So the first secondary effect was a sore back. The cyborg evolved. I decided to cut it and just use one ear, so I could hear people on this ear and I could hear colors on the other. But I felt a bit unbalanced because it was it wasn't comfortable. So, and the computer, the one below, is the second computer I used, which was smaller, 3 kilos. And then it kept evolving. The biggest change was to stop using headphones. I realized that we are very lucky because we have bones that transmit sound. So we can actually use our bone to hear. We don't need to use our ears. So I decided to use my bone to hear color, and in that way I would have 2 audio inputs. One would be normal sound, would go into my ear, and the visual sound would go through my bone. So I had the sound with pressure going to my bone so I could hear colors through my bone. I was still using computer, and the computer got smaller and smaller, but in the end this was the smallest computer, the back, which I used inside my jacket, and I had it connected to my body instead of a backpack. But the biggest change was to convert the whole system into a chip, which just happened in 2010. And you can see the process of the creation of the chip on iBorg, and you can see the little problems we had. Okay, so the biggest change was to say goodbye to the computer and to use just the chip, and then it became much easier to hear color. The other thing I realized is that I was copying the vision system, the human vision system, and I realized that humans don't see color very well. Humans only see from red to violet, and this system, the color wheel, is an artificial thing. It's only related to human vision. So it starts red and it ends in red because humans cannot see ultraviolet. So after violet, you see red again. So I realized that I was copying a system, a visual system that wasn't good enough. So I decided to change the scale, and now I use a different scale that allows me to perceive infrared, and that it will allow me to perceive ultraviolet colors. So it helps me extend not only my own physical visual system, but human visual system, which is only really small when you compare color vision with other animals. There's birds that can see ultraviolet colors, but we cannot. Now, my life has changed completely since I hear color. Before, I only dressed in black and white. I didn't like to use something that I couldn't see. But now I dress not in a way that it looks good, but in a way that it sounds good. So I would dress, for example, do, mi, sol, do. That would be a nice combination. It would be a happy combination. It was a major chord. So if I feel happy, I might dress like do, mi, sol, do. If I feel normal, I could go fa, la, do, fa, which is a different chord. It's still quite happy, but it's, and for example, this re, fa, la, re would be a sad one, maybe a bit sad. And I could go like this in a funeral, for example. And this would be just dressing like a clown. I would sound a lot here. Now, a big change is also food. People used to say, how come you can eat gray food? Isn't it sad? For me, it's very normal to eat gray food. Everything visually is gray, but since I hear color, I find that food is very fun, very good fun. Especially, you can combine food on a plate so that it sounds good, and so that you can eat your favorite song. So depending on how you put the different food, you can play music with it. And I'm sure that if salads sounded like Justin Bieber, children would definitely eat more vegetables. Milk doesn't sound. So white things don't sound, black things don't sound, and gray, pure gray things don't sound, because they don't have tone. So this is, you can imagine how exciting it is to walk along a supermarket, for example, or just a normal fruit and vegetable market. Everything has changed now. So for me, not only visual art has become music, but going to supermarket has become like going to a discotheque, hearing music, electronic music everywhere. It's where you can find the most amazing colors, and it's even more exciting to go for a walk in a supermarket than going for a walk in the forest, because the forest has only different shades of the same tone. And since I can hear color, visual art has changed completely. All painters have become composers, and I can say that Picasso sounds very good. He was a great composer, and there's different artists that I didn't look before, and that now that I can hear, I'm looking them in a different way, like Rothko. Here's just how some of these paintings sound. saturated, so the volume is very high. This one has low saturation, so it sounds lower. Now, there are some secondary effects of listening to color. And this happened when one day I took the telephone and I heard that the telephone was green, because the frequency of the telephone line was exactly like the color green. So I knew that the telephone wasn't green, but I was feeling green. And this happens a lot with electronic things, like, I don't know if there's any here now, but for example, Hoover, or when you hoover the floor, the machine creates sine waves as well, which relates to a color. Air conditioned, they usually sound purple. Fridges also have some blue sounds. So the effect is that normal sounds, like music as well, become color. So everything that is color sounds, and everything that is sound becomes color. So what I enjoy doing is painting music. For example, this is Beethoven's For Elisa. These are the first 100 notes of the Para Elisa, which is a piano piece by Beethoven. And you can see that the main color is like purple-blue, which is, it relates as well to the type of music. This, for example, one of Mozart's symphony, the first 100 notes. Mozart, in general, was very yellow. He used a lot of the same frequency, which was yellow. And this, for example, is the Four Seasons of Vivaldi. And this painting made me see that there is a strange relationship between this and what people feel. When I asked which of these is winter, most people say it's the one on the top left, and that's correct, it's that one. When I ask which one is summer, people say the one at the bottom on the left, and it's correct. So it made me realize that maybe there is an unconscious relationship between the physical frequency of color and its sound. So maybe Vivaldi could feel those colors, could feel these musical notes in the same way that they correlate. This, for example, is the Spanish anthem. So if it had to be a flag, if we had to transform a national anthem into a flag, this would be the flag of Spain, for example. Now, another big shock since I hear color is that cities are not gray. This is something that has shocked me a lot. I thought that cities were gray, but since I hear color, I've realized that there's color in every street, there's lots of colors in every city, and I still don't understand why. Well, I think I do. I think the main reason is because people say that this is gray, but this is not gray. This is actually an unsaturated dark yellow, but people still call that this is gray, whereas I don't hear it gray. I cannot perceive this as a gray color. This is yellow, a dark yellow, an unsaturated dark yellow. What would be gray would be this, which is the absence of tone. So what I enjoy doing is to walk around a city. I usually walk around the city for several days, and I keep scanning the houses, the streets with my eye, and then I try to detect the dominant color of each city. And up until now, I've visited more than 40 countries to its capital and trying to detect the main color. For example, Madrid is amber terracotta. You can detect these colors in every single street. Lisboa is turquoise and light yellow. You can perceive turquoise in every street. London, for example, is red and yellow. There's a very, very dominant red city. And this happens with all cities. They all have dominant colors. Another big change is that this sentence now to me has a relation. For example, now a girl with blonde hair, blue eyes, dressed in pink, to me now is a girl with G hair, C-sharp eyes, and dressed in E. So it's changed the way I perceive people as well. What I enjoy doing a lot is listening to faces, because when I look at someone, I not only hear them talking, I also hear their face. And each face sounds different. And I enjoy writing down the notes of someone's face. And I'll show you a bit how it sounds, how one face could sound. So each phase usually has 4 or 5 different notes, dominant notes, and I usually write them down. What I enjoy doing is listening to well-known faces. Like here I'm listening to the face of Tapias, a painter which died just 2 days ago. Here I was listening to Woody Allen's face. Here is President of Catalonia. So I keep listening and listening to different faces, and I'm creating a sound portrait gallery so that people can compare their faces not by how they look, but for how they sound. Here I was doing Prince Charles, who was one of the first I listened, and there I realized that color and form are 2 worlds apart, because he sounds very good, and you wouldn't say that visually, but his face sounds quite good. And now you will hear some of these faces later. Here I was listening to Tim Berners-Lee in a previous campus party, Al Gore, and here I was listening to Vince Cerf. A curious thing about Vince Cerf is that he has synesthesia, which is a natural form that people have. Some people can hear colors and can perceive colors when they hear music without how is it? Involuntarily. So biologically, he can hear and perceive color when he hears music, something like this. Here's how some of these faces sound. It's stuck. Well, they're on YouTube, sound portraits. You can listen to some faces there. Now, the greatest thing I've noticed is that there are no black skins and there are no white skins. We all share the same tone, which is orange. People that say that their skin is black, it's not actually true. It's very, very dark orange. And people that say that they are white is not true. They are actually very light orange. And this is one of the biggest things I found. I realized that the fact that we are white and black is absolutely false. I've never perceived a black skin and I've never perceived a white skin. It wouldn't sound if it was so. What I also enjoy doing now is concerts without playing music. I play faces. So instead of bringing my instrument, I ask the people from the audience to create a cue, and then they come up and I start creating music from their face. I connect the eye to loudspeakers and then I decide which notes of the face I want to play, and I control the notes with pedals. So if the concert doesn't sound good, it's not my fault, it's the people's faces' fault. Here's an example. I'm using an extension. So you keep adding layers and layers and layers of color until you create a sound atmosphere and different, you can even create melodies. While it goes on. Okay. Now, this project started appearing on the press, and I received a lot of emails from people around the world interested in extending their senses and becoming cyborgs as well. They wanted to perceive things that they couldn't see or they couldn't perceive. And then that's why after some time I decided to create a foundation to help people become cyborgs. So we created the Cyborg Foundation, which is literally a foundation that helps people become cyborgs. So what we do is we try to create whatever the person wants in order to extend his perceptions or senses. So we do three basic things. We help people become cyborgs. We also defend the cyborg rights, because like things about the passport or like very common things like I usually get kicked out from supermarkets or from, I'm not allowed in cinemas sometimes because they think I will film the film and then I will sell it or something. So I have problems in my daily life because people that use technology as part of their body are still not socially accepted. And the third thing we do is to explain and to use how to use technology not as a tool, but as a part of the body. The important thing about the foundation is that we do not want to repair people. We want to extend senses and extend perceptions. In my case, I still see in black and white, and I don't need to see in color. I think perceiving color through this new sense, it's much more precise and much better than actually seeing it. It actually allows me to extend visual perception, because through sound I can extend it even more. And you don't really need to repair any sense. You can create a new one with technology. We do different projects. For example, we've done iBorgs for blind people. The effects are different because people that have seen color before and that suddenly learn this new language, they can start remembering color, and then they can actually see color again in their mind, which is very exciting. And then this is in Ecuador, where we are also creating new eyes now in Ecuador, where, for example, instead of reading colors, it can read words. So, for example, if blind people used electronic eyes to read instead of using Braille, then there would be no need for Braille. If every single blind person in the world used an electronic eye that read the word in front of you, there would be no need for Braille. So it might disappear in 50, 60 years. Another thing is the opposite of this. Instead of hearing colors, you can also visualize colors. Instead of visualize sound. So instead of using it to hear the sound of colors, you can use it to visualize the color of sound, which can help completely deaf people to have a sense of pitch, because you can read someone's lips, but you cannot tell which pitch the person is talking. So if you translate pitch into color, you can detect something that you cannot detect without technology. So this would be, for example, it's not just music, but it's also voice recognition. You can use it to perceive the frequency in which someone is talking. When we talk, we usually have a dominant frequency, which is a dominant color. And then if you can visualize the color of voice, you can tell what the dominant color of someone's voice is. For example,
I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream.
So you can detect the dominant color of Martin Luther King, for example, is turquoise, blue, violet. There's hardly any red or orange. Now, other projects we've done is the fingerboard. This is a project that happened when a boy came to the foundation and told us that he had a finger missing and that he wanted to extend his abilities. So we asked him what he was interested in doing, and he was studying audiovisuals. So he was very interested in having something that would help his profession. So we talked, and then we finally saw that if he had a camera in his finger, then he wouldn't need to use a camera to take pictures of film. So we decided to attach a camera to his prosthetic finger, and now he can actually take pictures or film with his own hand without having to take out a camera or take out a video camera. Now, although it's a project, we do not consider this project a cyborg project, because to us, there is no communication between the camera and his brain. He's simply using a camera as part of his body, but there is no communication. So it would probably define himself more better if we call him a bionic person, because he considers now that this electronic finger is part of his body. He actually says that he feels complete now that he has this finger, but there's still no communication between the machine and the brain. We will try, and we will find ways so that he can actually use it in a more cyborg way. But actually, he's quite happy like this. He doesn't really intend to change it. There's other projects called the Speedborg. This is a new sense, which is to perceive the exact speed of someone. So we cannot perceive now. I cannot tell how fast that girl is walking, and I cannot say how fast he is walking. I can only say he's walking quite slow, and that he's walking a bit faster. And then we don't have the exact speed sense, and this is what Monribes wanted to develop the exact speed sense. So what we created is this. Well, this is the first one. It was like a radar, like police radars attached to her hand so that she could detect the exact speed of people. But now she's wearing it on her ears. So she has a detector here and another one here that creates an electronic impulse when something moves in front of her. And the language that she's developing is on intervals. So when this ear has an impulse, and then she calculates that there's another impulse here, she has to calculate the exact interval between this and this so that she can tell what speed it is. And it is a language that she's developing and learning little by little. Now, Speedborg, for example, is a cyborg project because there is a straight communication between the machine, because it creates an impulse to her ear, and this is creating a new sense because she's learning electronic impulses. Whereas with the camera, there was no impulse, there was no communication between the machine and the body. So it's a slight difference. We quite a big difference because this creates new sense extending perception. Now, we are in a century of transition. All of us are wearing electronic equipment, we're using our pockets. Now the next big step is to use the space between the bone and the skin as a pocket. And I think this will be a little but big change that will give us the opportunity to create new senses and new perceptions. Now I see that at the moment there are probably three main groups. Mechanoids would be people that use mechanic elements as part of their body. So it's the kind of use of mechanic elements that are not electronic and that are used to increase physical abilities. Then there would be bionic people, which would be people that use electronic equipment as part of the body. So it's like hands-free. You can use things hand-free because you attach the electronic equipment to your body. And there would be a third group, would be cyborgs that use cybernetic elements as part of their organism to create new senses and new perceptions. I think one of the biggest things of this event is that we can share and we can learn a lot from each other. And I think we are the ones responsible to share to the rest of the world the different uses that we can make of technology. I think we are used to being told that we have to eat because we have to grow. We are constantly being told that we have to study because we have to grow intellectually. The churches also say that we have to grow spiritually. But there isn't much people telling us to grow in perception or to grow in senses. And I think this is what we should do, the ones that have contact with technology. Because I think when people realize that if we unite our bodies to technology to extend our senses and perceptions, we will be able to understand much better the world that surrounds us, and we will be able to perceive things that we cannot perceive without uniting to technology. Thank you very much.
Pessoal, nós vamos ter uns minutos aqui para perguntas. A gente só vai pegar o headset para ele e a gente já começa a abrir para vocês. Então, pessoal, quem quiser fazer pergunta, tem o pessoal aqui com o microfone aqui na frente, tá certo? Levanta a mão. Eu vou pedir o seguinte, mesmo que você fale inglês, faça a pergunta em português, porque ele está com equipamento de tradução, senão ele confunde a cabeça dele, ok?
Alô? Oi, aqui do lado direito do palco.
Aqui.
Oi. Meu nome é Vivian e primeiro eu queria saber que distância que você enxerga a cor, até que distância que ele consegue identificar. E apareceu um quadro ali que eu acredito que era da Marilyn Monroe e tem várias cores. Então como é que você sabe que parte é que cor, já que todas tocam ao mesmo tempo?
Well, it's not about the distance, but about how big the color is. So if it's very close, but it's very, very small, maybe I won't hear it. So it detects the main color that I have in front of me. So now I'm detecting the main color of you, and then if I get closer, I will hear the subtle differences. With the painting of Marilyn Monroe, what you could hear was the different colors I heard when I looked at it. So it's only with a slight move of head that the colors change.
Aqui, gostaria de saber quais são os efeitos do uso do iBorg para pessoas que enxergam as cores.
We haven't tried it yet. So I think the effect would be that people would start having like psychedelic effects, and I think it would be a very interesting drug for people because it would be healthy. So we haven't tried it, but I think that people would start hearing color and visualizing color when they heard notes.
Aqui do lado direito. A primeira pergunta, eu tenho duas, na verdade. A primeira é que o pesquisador brasileiro Miguel Nicoleles, ele está fazendo uma pesquisa para juntar partes biônicas com o cérebro. Por exemplo, quem teve um braço amputado ou perna amputada. Essas pessoas seriam consideradas ciborgues? E a segunda é que, vamos supor, você acha uma pessoa bonita ou atraente, você escolhe ela pela beleza que você vê ou pelo que você escuta?
The first question, there are different artificial legs. There are legs that are just mechanic, nothing electronic, so that would be a mechanoid. If the leg has something electronic, like a camera, it would be a bionic leg because he can record with the leg. But if the leg can feel if the floor is cold or the floor is hot, then that would be a cyborg. That would be the difference. Then the second question, yes, beauty is different when you hear colors. So people that are very ugly might sound very good. So, and the opposite as well. People that look very attractive might sound not so attractive. But I mean, it's a combination of both.
Aqui é lá do sua esquerda. Para nós, os ruídos, as cores convertidas em sons são relativamente irritantes. Eu queria saber se para você houve um período de adaptação para deixar de ser irritante e qual a diferença de volume entre uma pessoa falando com você e você ouvindo as cores.
Yes, the first reaction I had with color was a bit annoying because it was electronic sound and it was, it wasn't very beautiful. But to me, color has never been something beautiful. It's been something very interesting. So it didn't really mind. But after some times, so at the beginning, the colors were like information, and those sounds were just information. Then those sounds became perception, so it became a kind of automatic perception. And third, what happened was that I started finding some sounds more attractive than others, so it became a sensation. And at that point was when I started having favorite colors by the sound, so I started liking the sound of color. And the second question was the volume. Yeah, well, it was difficult to listen to people and to listen to color, so that's why using the bone changed so much, because when I hear through the bone, I know it's a visual sound. When I hear through my ear, I know it's an audio sound.
Eu queria saber quanto tempo tu percebe a diferença das cores. Por quanto tempo tu levou? Ou tu tem um ouvido perfeito para diferenciar as frequências das cores?
I didn't have perfect pitch, and I've noticed that it's much better to learn colors if you have no musical trainment, because colors are microtonal and music has only got 12 notes in an octave. So people that know music find it really hard to accept that there are sounds between a semitone. And I had a bit of a problem adapting to all these notes, but it took like 5 weeks to memorize the main colors, and then afterwards it was very easy to add more colors because we simply added colors in between. So going from 120 colors to 240 colors is not much because you simply add one color in between.
Aqui. A cibernética, ela adiciona novos sentidos ao cérebro humano. São sentidos não naturais através da evolução. Você acredita que existe uma capacidade infinita para o cérebro para receber esses novos sentidos ou há um limite?
I think we have no limits in creating new senses and new perceptions. I mean, many doctors are surprised that I've adapted so well because I started when I was 21. So it really hasn't had, I had strong headaches at the beginning because it was something very new and it was a constant input. But after 5 weeks, it all became natural. So I think we could all adapt to new senses. There is no, we are actually using our brain only in a small percentage, and we have so much capacity that we are not using. We are only using our brain to learn things and to feel, but we're not using it to extend. And this is, I think we should all start extending senses. Yeah.
Do you want to say one last thing, just to end? Like a last message?
Well, thank you very much.
Ok, pessoal, muito obrigado. Tá certo? O Neil está aqui esses dias na Campus Party, então você pode encontrar ele passeando por aí, tá certo? Se tiver mais alguma dúvida, venha conversar, aproveite a oportunidade de que ele está por aqui. Lembrando ao pessoal que pegou os aparelhinhos para tradução simultânea, para devolver aqui à esquerda do palco, tá certo? E ao pessoal da imprensa, o Neil agora vai aqui para Campus Business para fazer a coletiva de imprensa e responder perguntas para os repórteres. Portanto, né, quem tiver interessado, o pessoal da imprensa, por favor, vir aqui para Campus Party.